Right now, you think you're aware, you think you're seeing what's around you, you think you're experiencing reality as it is, but you're not even close. Because what you're seeing right now is only a tiny fraction, a selected version, a filtered stream, carefully chosen by your brain. Out of everything that exists around you, your brain is showing you almost nothing and hiding everything else, not randomly, not accidentally, on purpose. Your brain is constantly receiving an overwhelming amount of information. Light, sound, movement, signals, millions of inputs every second, far more than you could ever process consciously. If you were aware of all of it, you would freeze, overload, lose focus completely. So your brain does something critical. It filters, aggressively, relentlessly. It decides what matters, and more importantly, what doesn't. And then it deletes the rest, before you even know it exists. That's the system. It has a name, selective attention, and it controls your entire experience of reality. You don't see everything. You see what your brain decides is relevant. That's why you can be in a room full of details and notice almost none of them, until something changes, until something becomes important. Then suddenly, you see it. But it was always there. Your brain just didn't show it to you. That's the key. Reality didn't change. Your filter did. And that filter is not neutral. It's trained, over time, by your experiences, your beliefs, your fears, your goals. Everything you've ever focused on has shaped what your brain chooses to show you. That's why two people can live in the same world and see completely different things, because they're not looking at the same reality. They're looking through different filters. If your brain believes something is important, it highlights it. If it believes something is irrelevant, it removes it completely, without asking you, without informing you. You never even know what you're missing, and that's what makes it powerful. Because you trust what you see. You assume, if I don't see it, it's not there. But that's not true. It's just not selected. Your brain acts like a spotlight. It shines light on a few things and leaves everything else in darkness. And you think the light is everything, but it's not. It's just what you're allowed to see. This is why your life feels the way it does. Because what you experience is not everything that exists. It's everything your brain selected. And selection creates reality. If your brain is focused on problems, you see problems everywhere. If your brain is focused on lack, you see lack everywhere. If your brain is focused on opportunity, you start seeing opportunities. Not because they suddenly appeared, because your filter changed. That's how powerful this system is. It doesn't just shape your perception, it shapes your life. Because what you see determines how you think, how you feel, how you act, and how you act determines your results. So if your brain is filtering reality in a certain way, your life will follow that pattern, automatically, without you realizing. That's why some people feel stuck, because their brain is filtering out possibilities, ignoring opportunities, focusing only on limitations, and they think this is just how life is. But it's not. It's how their brain is selecting reality. Your brain is not showing you truth. It's showing you relevance. And relevance is based on your past, what you've experienced before, what you've focused on repeatedly, what you've emotionally reacted to. Those patterns tell your brain what to look for, and your brain follows that instruction every second, silently, automatically. That's why your attention matters. Because what you repeatedly focus on trains your brain. It tells your system, this is important. Show me more of this. And your brain obeys. It starts scanning the environment, looking for matching patterns, highlighting them, amplifying them, and hiding everything else. That's how your world is constructed. Not from everything that exists, from what your brain selects. And once something is selected, it feels real, obvious, certain, because you're not seeing alternatives. You're not seeing what was filtered out. You're only seeing what remains. That's why your perspective feels correct, because it's consistent. But consistency is not truth. It's repetition. Your brain is repeating the same filtering process again and again and again until it becomes your reality, and you stop questioning it. You stop noticing it. You stop seeing that it's happening because it feels natural. It feels automatic. It feels like, this is just how I see things. But it's not how you see things, it's how your brain shows them. And that's a massive difference. Because if your brain is controlling what you see, then it's also controlling what you don't see. And what you don't see can change everything. Opportunities, solutions, paths, possibilities, all of them can exist right in front of you, and you won't notice. Not because they're hidden, because they're filtered out. That's the hidden system. You're not blind. You're selectively aware. And selective awareness is not neutral. It's biased, based on your past, based on your conditioning, based on what your brain has learned to prioritize. That's why changing your life doesn't start with action. It starts with perception. Because until you change what you see, you can't change what you do. And until you change what your brain selects, your reality stays the same. That's the truth. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing an edited version of it. And until you understand that, you'll keep living inside a world that feels real, but isn't complete. There's a system in your brain, quiet, invisible, but constantly active. You've never seen it. You've never felt it directly, but it decides what enters your awareness and what gets ignored. It's called the reticular activating system, RAS, and it's one of the most powerful systems controlling your life. Not your actions, not your choices, your perception, because before you act, before you decide, before you think, you have to see something, and the RAS decides what you see. Out of millions of inputs, it selects a few, based on one thing, relevance. But here's the real question. Who decides what's relevant? Not logic, not truth. Your beliefs, your identity, your past, everything you think is you, is programming the system. The RAS doesn't search for reality. It searches for confirmation. It scans the environment, looking for evidence that supports what you already believe. And when it finds it, it highlights it, amplifies it, brings it into your awareness, and everything else? Ignored, filtered out, deleted. That's why your beliefs feel real, because your brain keeps showing you evidence that they are, even if they're not, even if they're limiting, even if they're false. If you believe, I'm not good enough, your brain will scan the world, looking for proof, moments where you fail, situations where you hesitate, people who don't respond the way you expect, and it will show you those moments, clearly, repeatedly, until it feels undeniable. This is who I am. But what you don't see is everything your brain removed, every success, every opportunity, every positive signal filtered out because it doesn't match the belief. That's how the system maintains consistency, not by showing truth, by showing confirmation. Your brain is not asking, what's actually happening? It's asking, what matches the model? And then it builds your reality around that. That's the power of belief. Not because beliefs are true, because they control perception. And perception creates experience. That's why changing your life feels so difficult, because you're not just changing actions, you're challenging a system that filters reality to protect your current identity. If your identity says, this is who I am, your brain will protect that at all costs, even if it limits you, even if it keeps you stuck, because consistency feels safe, and the RAS exists to maintain that safety by keeping your reality predictable, familiar, aligned with your past. That's why new possibilities feel invisible, not impossible, invisible, because your brain is not showing them to you. They don't match your current belief system, so they don't get selected, they don't enter awareness, and you think, there's nothing here, there's no opportunity, there's no way out. But that's not reality, that's your filter, and your filter is controlled by your identity. The way you see yourself determines what your brain shows you. If you see yourself as someone stuck, your brain will show you a world that confirms it. If you see yourself as someone growing, your brain will start showing you different signals, different patterns, different possibilities. Not because the world changed, because your filter did. That's the shift. And it's not external, it's internal. Your brain is constantly scanning, searching, matching patterns, trying to reduce uncertainty, and it uses your beliefs as a guide, a blueprint, to decide what matters. That's why repetition is so powerful, because what you repeat becomes familiar, and what's familiar becomes important, and what's important gets selected over and over until it dominates your awareness. That's how habits form. That's how identity stabilizes. That's how your life becomes predictable, not because it has to be, because your brain is filtering it that way. And once a pattern is established, the RAS reinforces it every day, every moment, quietly, automatically, without asking. That's why awareness alone is not enough. You can understand this system and still be controlled by it, because it's not conscious, it's automatic. It runs in the background, but there's a way to influence it, not by forcing it, not by fighting it, by feeding it, by changing what you repeatedly focus on. Because attention is input, and input trains the system. If you consistently focus on problems, your brain will find more problems. If you consistently focus on growth, your brain will start identifying growth opportunities. Not instantly, not magically, gradually, because the system updates over time, based on repetition, based on what you show it matters. That's why most people stay stuck, not because they lack ability, because they keep feeding the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same focus, and their brain responds by reinforcing the same reality, again and again and again. That's the loop. Belief, filter, perception, confirmation, stronger belief. And it continues until something interrupts it, not outside, inside. When you consciously shift your attention, when you deliberately focus on something different, when you question what your brain is showing you, when you stop accepting every perception as truth, that's when the system starts to loosen, not break, loosen. Because now, you're introducing new input, new patterns, new signals, and your brain has to adapt, slowly, but inevitably, because the system is flexible. It can change, but only if you change what you feed it. That's the key. You don't control what the RAS does directly, you control what you focus on. And that focus rewires the system over time, not instantly, but powerfully, because once the filter changes, your reality changes. Not because the world is different, because you're finally seeing what was always there. That's the truth. Your brain is not showing you everything. It's showing you what it was trained to see. And if you change the training, you change the world you experience, from the inside out. Now you see it. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to realize that what you've been calling reality was never neutral. It was selected, filtered, edited, before it ever reached you. And that realization is not comfortable, because it breaks something you've trusted your entire life. The idea that what I see is what is, but now you know that's not true. You know that what you see is what your brain decided to show you, based on your past, your beliefs, your identity. And that means something deeper, something most people never face. If your perception is filtered, then your entire life has been shaped by that filter. Every decision, every emotion, every direction you took was influenced by what you were able to see, and more importantly, by what you were not able to see. Opportunities you didn't notice, signals you ignored, paths that existed but never entered your awareness, not because they weren't real, because they weren't selected. That's the hidden cost of an unconscious filter. You don't just experience less, you live less, because your world is smaller than it actually is. Not physically, perceptually, and that's the trap, because a limited perception creates a limited life, and a limited life feels normal, because you don't see what's missing, you only see what's there. That's why people stay where they are, not because they want to, because they don't see beyond it. Their brain never shows them. And they believe this is it. This is all there is, but it's not. It's never was. You were just looking through a narrow filter, a filter built over years, reinforced by repetition, protected by your brain, because predictability feels safe. But safety is what's been holding you back. Now here's the shift, the real shift, the one that changes everything. You don't need to change reality, you need to change what your brain is looking for, because your brain will find whatever you tell it is important, not what is true, what is repeated, what is focused on, what is emotionally charged. That's what the system responds to. So the question is not what's out there. The question is, what am I training my brain to see? Because whatever that answer is becomes your world. If you keep focusing on limitations, your brain will build a reality full of them. If you focus on problems, you will live in a problem-filled world. If you focus on growth, your brain will start showing you paths, signals, possibilities, not because they suddenly appeared, because you're finally noticing them. That's the shift, from unconscious perception to intentional awareness, from being shown a reality to influencing what gets shown. And that's power, real power. Not control over the world, control over what you perceive in it, because perception is where everything begins. But here's the part most people get wrong. This is not positive thinking. This is not pretending everything is good. This is not ignoring reality. This is understanding how reality is constructed inside your brain and using that knowledge to reshape your experience. Because once you see the filter, you can't trust it blindly anymore. You start questioning, why am I seeing this? What am I not seeing? Is this the full picture or just a selection? And that question opens something. It creates space between you and the automatic system. And in that space, you begin to notice more subtle signals, ignored details, opportunities that were always there but never entered your awareness. And slowly, your world expands. Not because reality changed, because your filter did. That's how transformation actually works. Not by forcing new actions, by changing perception. Because once you see something, you can't ignore it. Once something enters your awareness, it becomes real. And once it becomes real, you can act on it. That's the chain. Perception, awareness, action, change. But it starts at the beginning, with what your brain selects. And now, you're not completely blind to it. You can see the system. You can feel it. You can notice when your brain highlights something and when it ignores something else. And that awareness gives you leverage, not full control, but influence. Over time, over repetition, over focus. Because the more you consciously direct your attention, the more you train your brain. And the more you train your brain, the more your perception changes. And the more your perception changes, the more your life changes. From the inside out. That's the reality shift. Not dramatic, not instant, but deep, fundamental. Because you're no longer living inside a fixed world. You're living inside a system that can evolve, adapt, expand, based on how you use it. And most people never realize that. They think life is happening to them. They think reality is fixed. They think their situation is permanent, but it's not. It's filtered, and filters can change, but only if you see them, only if you question them, only if you stop accepting everything you see as the full truth, because it's not. It never was. It was always a selection. And now, you're aware of that selection, which means you're no longer completely controlled by it, and that changes everything, because now, you don't just live in your reality, you start shaping it, not by force, not by illusion, but by understanding the system that creates it. And once you understand the system, you stop being trapped by it and start using it. And that is where everything begins to change.